Hello, everybody, and welcome to STOked, the ultimate Star Trek Online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Yo, J-Man, I am in a good mood today.
Really?
Oh.
Can you tell me why?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you why. I just got done playing What's Old is New again.
Oh, really?
And I enjoyed the crap out of it.
Now, why?
Well, okay. Now, why not, actually, to be honest with you? I mean, really, there was a lot going on now. First of all, we'll just say up front, again, another ground combat heavy mission.
And yet still did not annoy me.
No.
We've gone on record in the past as saying that the ground combat in this game is not the key feature that people look forward to experiencing.
Right.
But in these weekly series...
Extremely risky to do this with the weeklies, too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet this entire series, basically, has been ground combat.
Yeah, I've realized, the
ground environments.
The first new space combat we got since this new weekly launched was the daily that we picked up today.
Right.
And that's fun. In fact, the daily even had something unique to it. But I think it's the main thing that's making this ground combat really sort of more palatable for me is the variety of tasks that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But I also don't feel like I'm just getting in dogfights constantly.
Yes, I think that they've scaled
attacks.
Back the amount of combat that you're doing in each individual map.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like you said, they're punctuating with other things to do between combat.
Yeah, it's like they're putting little mini puzzle commas in there.
Mm-hmm. Commas.
Yeah. I also was...
After these messages, more combat.
Yeah. I was also almost to the level of distracted by how great the artwork was. This whole map was beautiful.
What do you mean almost? You spent like the first 10 minutes playing the game going, and staring at walls.
I did. We should say, there's a live version right now. And if you're watching the live version, we were shooting all of the footage beforehand, and yeah, I kept getting distracted. It was really, really, really well done. It was the coloring, I think, that really nailed it.
Yeah.
And again, fantastic artwork. And to see the Drozana station now all lit up, I knew that was going to be rewarding, and it did pay off.
Yep.
So it made that previous episode that we just played on Halloween.
Yeah, I'll try to
cooler.
include a shot of what it looked like last week compared to this week.
Yeah, it's a good comparison. What did you think, though?
Of the whole mission as a whole?
Sure.
Whatever. I really enjoyed it. I think that there were a number of things going for it. First of all, the environment was awesome. Yes. I'm not as big of a fan of the original series as you are, so I wasn't quite... orgasming quite as much.
Sounds, right?
But yeah, great. The hand phasers that the other people were using.
And the little tricorder sounds and the button sounds.
It's weird, though, that 23rd century hand phasers were cutting through my personal shields like a hot knife through butter, though.
Boy, how much did you want a hot knife through butter? How much did you want to pick up one of those hot knives and equip it to your own self?
Absolutely.
Because I'd love to have gotten that gun.
That won't screw up the timeline, right?
Well, we do have
Stealing
one more
their equipment?
week. We have one more week, yeah. Well, now, do you script the timeline if you bring something from the past forward? I don't think so. But if you drop your phaser when you picked up that phaser, that's bad.
That would have been really bad.
Yeah,
because I was using that anti-proton rifle.
Something we got a few new things in this episode. This is actually the first time I'd seen the new Boff dialogue. Now I know that's not new to this episode.
Yeah, that was here last week, but you played with a full team last week.
Yep.
No Boffs.
Yep.
Yeah.
No Boffs. So this I really like. Much less up in your face. Still totally readable. Takes less screen real estate.
Mm-hmm. And for those quick little throwaways like. Captain, look over here, or Captain, I just saw something. The quick things that you don't need a full screen.
Right.
Oh, so much better.
Much better. And then I guess I'll ask you. But did you feel that when you were going back down to the Drozana station and you beamed back into the third season, did you feel like it was lifelike, like you would really had traveled back in time? Did you feel like you had traveled in time, or did it seem like it was just a new skin? Did it seem like you were in the 23rd century? Did it feel like Stowe Prime time that you've been playing this whole time?
A few things actually helped with that. I don't think that they quite nailed it. I think they got really close, though. The environment was really great, and the sounds were really great. Some of the things I was missing, though, was just some of the really cheesy, campy sound effects from the original series, like that they had on the bridge all the time.
Yeah.
Really was missing that. Now, I wasn't playing with headphones, so
there were a fair amount of little computer sound effects, but you had to be up to the just. Oh, and the consoles look so great.
The environment team on this really they've really done a great job.
And there was also something else that I kind of started talking about. There was something that was kind of new to this gameplay. Was the multiple choice paths that you could take. Fight the security patrols, or lock them up and hide from them. Reroute through Jeffrey's tubes, which I didn't even get a chance to do that.
You didn't?
No.
Oh.
Was that cool or what?
Yeah.
I looked over on your screen and I thought, amazing. You had a choice to go, so do something that was diplomacy, do something that's attack, or just do some dialogue.
Espionage, like sneaking around and hiding from things.
It was so cool.
Great.
And also, I guess if you don't fire a single shot at another Federation officer, you end the whole mission with an accolade, which is cool too.
Yeah, you get cunning and guile. I think it's called.
My accolade was in distress. Something because we were playing the first time we went through. We were playing on the higher level setting.
That was the first time you had incurred an injury.
Yeah, because I usually don't play on advanced. I usually play on normal because I
ground
don't
combat.
I like space combat at higher levels. I don't like ground combat.
And you can't switch on the fly.
Exactly. So I just leave it at normal.
Right.
But if I could flip it, I would flip it. Anything else?
The medical puzzle. Again, this is another thing where you basically have to read a whole bunch of stuff and then regurgitate it through a series of click-ups. Now,
it wasn't as much though.
No, I think the best part of the medical puzzle, honestly, was interacting with
McCoy,
Dr. Leonard McCoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting to see McCoy, not what I expected at all.
No,
you had called, Harry Mudd or Cyrano Jones as maybe who would be, because that is, less. I don't know, intellectual property rights issues that are around those characters or whatever.
Issues and things like that.
Yeah. But when I saw McCoy, now that really was a legend, and it fit because he's doing a medical thing. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, sure, a real Star Trek legend. Sure.
He's even got his "I'm a doctor, not an engineer" line.
Yeah, and then you through Dr. McCoy, you do play that mini game, and it's not bad. It's the mini games. I thought they struck a much better, really confusing dialogue versus things you have to do. Like, I was expecting the power rerouting thing to be much more complicated than it actually turned out to be.
Right. So was I, which was why I actually almost got it wrong at first, because I thought it was going to be more complicated than it was.
But it was actually the right amount of complicated, and because it involved in that,
especially with having multiple puzzles in the same, plus with all the different choices that you could make throughout the whole thing.
You didn't get the fatigue of it.
If it bogged down too much with all of these different... Exactly.
Yeah, and that didn't happen.
Nope.
Actually, to be honest with you, when the episode ended, I was like, oh...
Well, it's got a great cliffhanger.
Yes, it does.
We know the next week's going to be the final confrontation with us having to take out Driffin's comet.
And I love that Section 31 just has a way to send you back in time. Oh, we can take care of that. Well, why didn't you just do that in the first place?
I hate time travel.
Why didn't you
I will go on the record.
Send me in my ship in the first place, Section 31.
And if they can send you back to the 23rd century, why don't they send you back to the 13th century and just destroy the comet back then?
That was my sort of this is so Star Trek. The bad guys have time traveled just to the point where you can't detect them. They don't go back to 10,000 BC where they could just own forever.
Right.
No, they go back to just when they probably have enough technology to stop them, but they don't detect them, just like the Borg did in First Contact. They go back to just the right spot. Come on. Why didn't they go back in time and kill people's mothers and things like that?
Yeah.
But that happens in Star Trek all the time. You can't really fault anybody for it.
I hate time travel because of that, though.
Yeah, it was fun though. I would like to have seen maybe you're right. That transition could have been a little smoother.
Yeah.
But at the end of the
more
of the
prevalent
episode,
sound effects I think would have gone a long way to making me feel more like I was in the original timeline.
Yeah.
And an eye light.
Very dramatic.
Yeah, very dramatic.
You end this episode and you get a retrofitted phaser array.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
It's blue.
Yep.
And it uses the original sound effect from the original series.
Now, you remember when STOked first launched, you and I both modded our game with that quick command you could do to turn your phaser blue, of course. Yeah. Cryptic had to, crap on our party. Understandably, we know the reasons. We remember everyone. Don't get up on our faces. But it's good to have blue back.
It was fun.
Once you go blue, it was tough to go back.
And you know what? Just this last week, I respected phasers. So it works out great for me.
Oh, really? You know what's funny is I have often thought about respecking away from phasers, and at the end, I always sort of just look at the advantages of phasers and the advantages of the other things, and I go, I like phasers. Plus, from the Star Trek geek in me, I think they really got the phaser effect really well in this game.
Yeah.
And I love seeing it.
Yeah.
Now that they're blue, I'm going to have to move this from ship to ship. I have to.
Yeah, well, that's the other cool thing about it is it just like most of these weekly rewards, it levels up with you. So if you do this episode at a low level, you can keep that phaser forever. It'll rank up with you.
That is really cool.
Levels.
Yeah. If I had been in this, because you can get in these once you're level 10 or something?
I believe level 10 is the lowest you can do them.
Oh, man.
Now, the other thing is, though, that there is a little bit to poo-poo on about this episode. We didn't personally play through it as Klingons, but I'm already hearing that the story kind of falls apart for them. Because as a Klingon, you do basically the exact same thing. You go back to ancient Drazana station being controlled by feds, and you're walking through with your Klingon KDF buffs, and nobody says a dang thing about it. Now, you don't get the diplomacy options. Like, at one point, you can bluff to a security guard and just be able to walk right by him. You basically have to attack everybody that confronts you. But there's a port where you talk to somebody at a console, and you basically try to convince them that you need to use the console to look for
Right. Yeah. I just need to hear. Could you step out of my way? I just need to use this really quick.
Right. As a Fed, you can either try to convince them or you can like knock her out and then use the console. But as a Klingon, you can still have those options. You can still just talk to her, and she's like, "No, I've got something to do here. Go find your own console."
I knocked her out.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Now if we're going to be nitpicky, now that's not a nitpick. I think that's a legitimate concern, and that's a challenge they're going to face going forward. And I think, we have an interview coming up with Gozer here in a couple of minutes, and, I think after we're listening to that interview and the previous interviews that we've had, the Klingons they have a commitment to the Klingons.
Yeah.
It's still early days in that commitment.
I think that this particular episode fell short of meeting that commitment by a pretty large margin.
What about, and I think that's fair to say, because it is a little out of place. If you wanted to complete the immersion, what would have been really cool, and I don't know if there's just probably not the back end technology here to do that, but what if when you beam down to Drazana Station, you had to first go meet an NPC that said, I'm here with Section 31, I'm going to help you out. Here's your wardrobe. Because you can't go down there in those uniforms.
That would be great. We kind of talked about this a little bit last night before the show, is that if as a Fed, when you beam in, you are automatically outfitted in the 23rd century outfits.
Yeah, because you remember when Captain Picard is in First Contact, he's stepping into the turbo lift, and he says,
I would love to see that type of thing.
Yeah, and the computer outfits him when they beam down.
Yep.
And now you and I thought ahead. We went and got our classic uniforms on, so we weren't out of place.
I was wearing a Mirror Universe outfit.
Oh, but still technically time accurate.
Yeah, technically.
Just not timeline or universe.
It was just a transporter malfunction, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was. So we first flew over to K9. We got our uniforms on, and then we flew back. K7, right?
K9 is a very different station.
Yeah. No. And then we flew back to Drazana in the appropriate attire. I thought that was a nice touch, but Boy, this mission and the previous mission, and really the mission before that, but these last two missions, just super, super happy with.
I really enjoyed them.
This would be, and the great thing about level 10 is you could almost tell somebody who's a Star Trek fan, but maybe not a STO fan, get to level 10 just to get to these.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
This hooked them, and then they go back to doing patrols.
True. But you were saying it almost just was just a fun RPG all by itself.
Oh yeah, at one point I actually commented on the fact that I felt like, because of all the choices that I was given and the different puzzles I was facing, I actually felt like I was playing a Star Trek RPG.
Word, I thought so too. I had that. It was when you said this feels very RPG. I'd had that same thought.
It also helped, and this was just like a minor psychological thing, I guess, for me. But I didn't bring down 4 away team people, only 2.
Well, that was because they were supposed to keep it light so you didn't
Right, Drake
interfere.
told me to keep your team small.
Yeah, now I was on a full away team.
Right.
So I didn't have that, but now what about having only 2 boffs with you made it better? Less chaos?
I don't know. It made it feel like I was really in charge of the situation. And somehow, I don't know.
Well, because it seems like with more boffs, they sometimes just kind of go off and aggro something or do something. And with 2, you really got to pick, all right, well, this is my healer, and this one does this.
Yeah.
And really, probably when you're playing yourself, you're really only tracking about 2 boffs at a time anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
I really just make sure my medic's alive.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
Yep. I was like, when we beamed down, I was the only person bringing a boff the first time through. I'm like, well, none of us are medical, so. Second time through, I rejoined another group, and he had some boffs too. And actually, when the biggest bit of advice I give is put your boffs into passive mode, and then use that placer thing to go place them out of the way so they don't attract the security teams.
Right. The security teams, the feds on this, have a pretty small aggro radius. If you put your boffs on passive, and
they hurt.
And
if they shoot you,
skirt around them, you can actually avoid combat altogether.
Lock them in a room.
Really cool. Yeah.
And so that's when you went. Did you climb up the Jeffries tube? And that totally avoided the combat?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
They came charged at me through the door before I went up the Jeffries tube.
He just climbed up to go up the Jeffries tube.
It was a Jeffries tube, dude.
Totally. We should have made that our background. That'd have been awesome. All right. So anything else you want to cover now? Should we move into some more season 3 news?
I think that's about it.
All right.
It gets a thumbs up from me, though, despite the little lumps.
Oh, totally thumbs up. A couple of lumps, but I mean, good game. And what game doesn't have lumps? And
really looking forward to next episode. Now, here's the thing, though. I want to talk about next week because I don't know a darn thing about it. But a comet is in space.
Yeah.
We have not up to this point in the game seen anything or heard anything about the possibility of Davidian ships.
And that's something I've been looking forward to. I love ships, and since the first Davidian episode, I said I hope we get to see a Davidian ship. That'd be a great payoff for the next one.
I have a sneaking suspicion that we won't, but I would really love to.
I do too. Because I think we probably would have seen something.
I think so as well. At least some sort of. I think Stahl would have.
And if we don't, then they've been lying to us in a way. No, I'm kidding. So speaking of Stahl, he came out in the forum and said, "Here's some more details about season 3."
Not just details about the season, but actually
on Tribble,
timeline.
Right? Well, some of this is on Tribble too, like the new Klingon stuff.
Yeah, this came out
got
just
some timeline stuff.
Yeah, this is basically like when stuff is going to arrive on Tribble.
Yeah. Okay.
This weekend, the KDF ships launched. In fact, if you're watching this live, I believe they're already on Tribble.
Yep,
you can go play with them right now.
Yep.
Oh, in fact,
that funny bug came up.
Yeah, the new ships, they failed to hook up the transwarp properly. So when you hit transwarp on those new Klingon ships, you end up at Earth Space Dock.
Yeah. So people went ahead and said, well, if I'm here, I might as well beam down.
Yeah.
And, of course, that eventually the devs caught wind of this. So then all of a sudden they start spawning Breen and they start spawning Borg drones. And I guess at one point, they spawned those Breen ships that then launch fighters.
Yeah.
And there was just a massive, epic battle.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I knew that kind of stuff was going down on Tribble, like if I just
on a regular
knew,
basis?
like Saturday, there's going to be a dev event somewhere.
Right.
Because you'll pick it up in chat. And I would, yes. Funny. Obviously, people had some fun, and that's a good way to get people on Tribble.
Yeah. I hope that they do something like that next week as well, because next week is when they're going to be launching all of the other in-development features on Tribble.
Except for
the Foundry. A little bit of bad news on that. It's still very deep in QA, and there's a number of features that they haven't currently been able to implement into the Foundry.
Closed beta is underway from
which they've said they need these features before the Foundry can be launched publicly. Right now, it's in a closed beta.
Yeah, and there's been sort of some prepping that it will ship in some form, likely, or just after season 3 ships, but in beta.
Well, basically at this point they just need to get these few features
and then
implemented,
it's open beta,
and then they need to make sure that it's running stable.
Right,
and then it'll be open beta
on Tribble.
Yep.
Yeah, and then people can do. You know what? Really, as soon as it hits Tribble, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm probably only going to be on production for the weekly episode, and then after that, I will never log into Holodeck. I'll just be in Tribble the entire time.
Yeah.
And really,
why not?
You know what? We should save some of it because we get into more of this with Gozer later on in the interview. So why don't let's start prepping for that. Also, check the show notes because all the information about the new Klingon ships is in there with the season 3 stuff.
Yep.
So you guys, if you're a Clink, you got to go over the show notes and read that. I know.
You are racist.
I know. I can't help it. It's because they killed my only son. Anyways, so we'll talk about Foundry, we'll talk about Klingons, we'll even talk about Special Task Force and so much more with Gozer. So let's stop talking about what we're going to talk about and let's talk to Gozer. Welcome to the interview segment, or I guess we kind of call this the media segment most of the time. But we like to stick various things in here, and this week we're excited to say that we have Dan, or also known as Cryptic Gozer.
Gozer the Gozerian.
On the Skype line. Hey there, Dan.
Hey, guys.
How you doing? We got to say welcome back. Big welcome back.
Yeah.
In fact, why don't we just get started here? That was our first question. While you were away for a short period of time, did you have any sort of creative breakthrough or thing that clicked, or maybe like a hindsight's 2020 where you were looking back, sort of now that since you were sort of removed from it all, you know how sometimes your perspective changes on things? Did you encounter anything like that?
No, I was pretty much brain dead.
Yeah, you were fried. Burned out might be another.
I think I needed the break more than anything. Just all the work that went into getting the game out, and then even when we shipped, it was I was still working on SDFs for another 3 months.
Yeah.
So by the time I left, I was pretty brain dead. I needed a break.
Well, you seem like you've been back in a big way because
no doubt.
Just looking at the Klingon content, I mean, it's just nuts. Like you just jumped right in. Of course, that's probably the advantage of having the Gozman back.
Right. I don't envy you having to pack up your whole life and move across the country twice in 3 months.
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
Yeah.
Plus with a cat.
Yeah, it makes the cat grumpy. So now you have. Should we get started, Dan? You mind if we throw a few KDF questions your way?
No, go ahead.
All right, J-Man.
Can you lay a few more details on us regarding the new optional content that's included in these KDF sorties?
So basically, Stahl and I and Scott sat in a room and we tried to figure out what was something we could do. We knew that we wanted to turn on Klingon crafting, but we didn't want to just make it the kind of the same.
Right.
So
As
is it actually the crafting that led to opening up these patrols and adapting them to the KDF?
Yeah, sort of. Basically, when you open up, one of the things we wanted to do is open up the sector. And when you open up a sector, it didn't want to just be an empty sector with nothing to do in it, for a KDF. So we said, well, what can we do and how can we tie it into the crafting? And that's kind of where this all started. And so basically I had some free cycles, so I tried to do some real quick mission work that didn't require any art. That's the key there. It didn't have to have any art.
Then there's no holdup.
Yeah.
We have these systems that were fed only, and all the art is done on them. So I kind of hit those and just kind of wrote 3 new missions and appropriated 3 more for the Klingon stuff. What happens when we make missions is the designer will actually do the layout generally, and so like what we call the white box. And
that's you, the designer.
Flow. Right. That creates the flow of the level and all that kind of stuff. And then the artist will come back in and make it pretty, basically.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds a little bit like the parallel would be. Well, I know, like in Star Trek, for example, when they were writing Encounter at Farpoint, the first episode, the writers knew that if they didn't write an engineering into the script, that they just were never going to get one built. In fact, it had been, I guess, discussed. And so in Encounter at Farpoint, they write a scene where they're walking through engineering. You might remember it's where the first time you all see a guy in a skirt walk by, and then they reveal engineering. Right. And it's sort of like, in that case, the designer of that episode wrote that in there, so that way the props and production people had to build it.
Had to.
Yeah, well, I did a little bit of that in our original shipping game. For instance, the only reason we had a transporter room, even though it was only one of them, and the only reason we had engineering was because of 2 of the missions that I made.
Including the tutorial, right? Where both
the tutorial is where the engineering section was made for. Yeah. So that wouldn't have existed if we hadn't put that into the tutorial.
That's really neat. So there are a lot of parallels there in some ways in that process.
Can you reveal what the special rewards are going to be for these optional... they're called sorties, right? The new KDF patrols?
Right. Well, so if you think about, you've probably already played the Federation ones, right? So you have what we call a mission wrapper, or you have a thing that says, go do these 3 patrols. And for those patrols, you do 3 of them because they're very quick missions, and then you get skill points and bridge officer points, and that's what the sorties are. They were the wrappers for the 2. So there's 6 missions total, and there's 2, and they're broken into 2 sorties.
Okay.
There's nothing any really special about them except when you get to, since they're any player level, so any level Klingon can do them. So I wanted to add an extra bit. So if depending on what level you do them at, if you're up to 44, I guess, then it's regular mission numerics. 45 to 50 gives you exploration tokens, the in-game Klingon exploration tokens.
Nice.
And then 51 gives you emblems.
Okay. And in all of those missions, you have the option of harvesting the new craftable.
Right, and they're actually, all of those missions either have... So normally when you go up to an anomaly and scan it, you'll get like one anomaly, right? Okay, so all of those missions still have those in them, but for the Klingons, I actually put special clickables in as well that give you 5 at a time. Basically, they have everything that the Federation does, and in addition to that, I gave them these missions. And in these missions, you can these missions will either have freighters that are flying around that you can disable.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
And steal their stuff, or they have little depots of these little clickables that will give you 5 at a time.
And instead of having to truck it all the way out to Memory Alpha, this will all be at Qo'nos, right?
Right. All the crafting stuff is at Qo'nos.
Yeah, that's going to be nice for the Klingons.
I honestly kind of wish that there would be crafting stations at Earth Space Dock. Maybe when they revamp it.
Well, Earth Space Dock isn't so far from Memory Alpha, but like
it's still a pain in the butt.
But there's definitely some other places where it'd be nice to have some
zone. Craft.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I'll tell you, they'll certainly be able to get crafting stuff a lot quicker than Fed will. I mean, these are all repeatable missions that I made too.
Oh.
So
you hear that, KDF whiners out there? You got a foot leg up on us.
That's a good one.
You can do those 6 missions every 30 minutes, and so. I mean, I played through them all today doing some testing, and I think I walked away with 40 or 50 of each type of resource.
Now, when you play through, I'm just curious because I've fantasized about this. Like, when you're going to zone in, do you say, all right, I'm going to zone in now as a whatever, and you just lay out the specs and you can be that person, or do you have to build the character all the way up to be able to play that? How does that work for you guys?
Oh, it's you're going to find out actually fairly quickly if when you start dealing with UGC, you have to make characters for UGC.
Interesting.
But basically, I make a character and then I use the dev commands to set everything up.
Okay. So you have a little secret sauce. All right. Any other KDF stuff, or do you want to go into the STOked?
No, I don't think. Well, have you been involved with creating the new ships or anything, or has it been basically these the new patrols and that's about it?
I basically have just been working on this, the new patrols and that kind of thing.
Now, we've also heard some rumors that Qo'nos is going to be getting a revamp soon. Have you been included in that discussion?
No, I have no idea.
Sure. All right, moving on.
Well, I think the big topic on everybody's lips is the special task forces.
Yep.
So I've got a whole load of questions here.
Oh joy!
Yeah, I know.
And now, first of all, like right up front, is there a rough timeline on where we can expect to start seeing tweaks, maybe even complete revamps of these things?
No.
Yeah. I got to figure you guys are pretty focused right now on season 3 and
yeah,
the
it's all about
right?
season 3 right now. It is on my plate. In fact, it was kind of when I first got here, that was kind of the direction I was going to do. I was going to do.
Yeah, we kind of got wind of that. Yeah.
And then this came up, and it was like, oh, I'd rather do this right now. So basically, it's going to happen. I don't know exactly. There's lots of discussion that has to go into.
So it's still in the conceptual planning stages.
And I think for me too, the way I operate from a creative standpoint, special task forces are definitely important to do. But season 3, I mean, I think everybody's just really focused on that. I know I am in the Foundry. I cannot wait to play with that on Tribble.
Yeah,
it's a lot. The first time I played with it was yesterday, and I wanted to see what it was like. It's pretty interesting. For years and years and years, when I wasn't doing this professionally, I was a modder, right? So I got out there and I taught myself engines like Unreal and Aurora, which was Neverwinter. Yeah. So Unreal and Aurora and Half-Life. So having that experience, and the first time I used our tools yesterday, it was really, really cool. It was like, oh, okay, well, this is pretty straightforward. It's much easier to use.
Okay, I was just going to ask how the learning curve is compared to some of those other tools that you just mentioned.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, I can see where people would get frustrated with those other tools very, very quickly, especially if they've never done anything in 3D space before
or coding.
Yeah, yeah. So our tools are really easy. That tool is very easy. I mean, it's completely different than what we have. I don't know. I was trying to think of an analogy for this yesterday. It's kind of like if you go into, a mechanic's bay and you see, he's got these 2 10-foot tall tool chests, right, with tons and tons of tools. That would be our tools, and basically you guys are getting like a screwdriver and a wrench. That's kind of the difference.
And then a bunch of pre-built car parts to snap together.
But I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure probably once I master that, I'm going to want more. There's nothing to say couldn't filter down later.
Right.
I could see that. Now,
it's important to get that thing, it's important to get that very functional and bug-free and on a basic level, and then you can always add to it.
Now, are you guys kind of thinking that you're going to, when this comes out, are you expecting kind of a swarm of activity, like everybody loading up on Tribble all of a sudden? Because I've got to figure. I was just thinking about it today.
I think we'll check it out.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I've always been a big fan of user-generated content.
Now, I know you're kind of not really thinking about the Special Task Force, but one of the things that we heard Stahl mention, and I'm just wondering if, when you think you might get back to it, if this is something you guys might kick around, is there was a hint from Stahl about solo playable special task forces down the road, like alternatives that a single person could go after.
So first off, the one thing that we agreed on completely when we started talking about this was that the ones that are there for the people that are already playing them and like them, those aren't going to go anywhere.
Okay. If
anything, we make new ones with the stuff that we used to make those, if that makes sense.
Like the existing environments and props and things.
Those 4 missions aren't going to go anywhere. The first thing will be fixing Terradome, and then going back to those other 3 and making sure they're all functional. Doing a bug check on all the rest of them, because what happens is they were working fine when I left, but we have data drift. Every new feature that they put in the game, could affect stuff that far back.
Every time you change one ability or part of the AI code, it changes the entire...
One of the things that I had talked to Stahl about was solo versions are hard because those things weren't hard because of like mob difficulty, if you get what I'm saying. They were hard because they required teamwork, and that's nothing. I can't really pull that out.
Right.
So if I pull out everything that required teamwork, then you wouldn't have a mission.
Actually, that's the first thing I thought of, because my whole take on the Special Task Forces was always it was designed to be high level content to encourage group playing. So it seemed like if you made it a solo version, that was sort of the.
At the same time, there's a pretty good portion of the population that feels that high-end content was too difficult. Is there any? You've said that they're going to stay as is, but is there any tuning that's going to be done on that end, or will they remain difficult group-oriented content?
So those versions, the way they are now, aren't going to change.
Okay.
I mean, those will always be there. I don't really know what we're going to do for solo. I mean, there's a pretty good story there. One of the things I had thought of was possibly break for solo versions of them, break them out and like all the stuff up to the boss battles, maybe break that out as a solo mission and then have the boss battles be still boss battles.
I can see that working. Like the whole first half of, let's say, Infected, for example, up until you get to that first, some call him a mini boss, right? That's kind of what you're.
I think that would be really cool.
It's just basically swarms of Borg.
Yeah, I mean, the STFs were never designed to be pug friendly. I mean, they were meant to be 5 people who played together all the time
and have good interactions
and work together and wanted to play together. Right. That's what they were made for. Mm-hmm. So making a pickup group friendly version would be basically saying, okay, we're going to take all these other bits out, or make those solo missions that you could play on your own anytime you wanted to, and then get to like the boss battle, and then it's going to be a lot easier to find 20 people that or 10 people or 5 people that just want to do that part of it.
Yeah,
right. My next question is probably tech related, but I know you've had your fingers in this pot in the past. Is there any intention of having multi-group raids, or in some way linking multiple groups together for things like the existing fleet actions?
More than 5 people on a team, that's going to be a core change. I see a lot of people ask in the forums to have, for Klingons especially, to have let them combine teams for the STFs. And if it were really easy to do, we would have already done that. Right. But it requires a change at a base level of our engine that's going to take a lot of tech time to allow Klingons and Federation to actually join up and work together on missions. So,
But if it could be done simply, the content would be easily adapted to it.
Yeah, it's not a content problem. It's you being a Klingon and me being a Federation guy in a group, and what problems that's going to cause throughout the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to circle back with the Foundry. When the game was earlier in the development phase, before it was released and things like that, was there always talk of doing some sort of UGC aspect to it? Because we've seen things in game a few times, or in the way the game works, we've thought there might have been some long-term thoughts to doing some sort of UGC. Is there any truth to that?
I think that's been an ongoing goal for Cryptic for a while, even before Star Trek, was making a user-generated set of tools.
Well, I mean, that kind of stuff, demo record, combined with the Foundry, I mean, I'm really hoping we see some pretty cool like video sequences made and stuff like that. Some reenactments of some TV scenes and stuff like that could be really cool. I mean, you guys might end up with people making a whole new online Star Trek series based on the Star Trek Online content creation tools, because with demo record and UGC, you could set up a scene and you could shoot it how you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could do red versus blue only in STO. Well, if we ever do something like that, Gozer, we'd like to get you on the show, and maybe you could
maybe doing a voiceover,
a guest star in like a STO sitcom. Yeah, voiceover, totally. We'll do a sitcom based in STO, and Gozer will stop by. He'll be the zany neighbor.
Yeah, I know that the UGC thing, the question, I mean, that's sort of where the Genesis system started.
Right.
It was trying to make some of the more mundane tasks that the designers have to do actually
automated.
Automated.
Streamlined, yeah.
And so from that came UGC as well. So I think it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it.
Cool.
Now, in terms of some of the future content coming down the road, after you've gotten your hands back into the STFs, I know that you're going to finally be getting, Into the Hive will finally be coming into our hands at some point in the future. Is there any details that you can tell us about the other one that was hinted at, though, the Children of Khan?
I don't know where that is. That one wasn't going to be me, so I never had much to do with it.
Stahl has suggested that it could someday develop into an episode, a weekly series, too.
Oh, that's true.
So maybe we'll see that. That'd be pretty neat.
Are you involved in the current weekly series at all, or have you kind of been heads down in the KDF adaptation?
No, they were already well underway on those, so I didn't have.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
I've been playing them. I think they're awesome.
I think so too. Especially the last one was just great.
The Halloween episode.
Yep, I really like that. So I mean that, I think has been just we were just kind of talking. This is our 58th episode. We've been on the air since before STO launched, and looking back over the game, I don't think I've seen a more positive thing happen. Obviously all of the work everybody's done, but as far as like adding content, adding the social aspect, making people excited about the game on a reoccurring basis is just the weeklies are just, I think, in that way huge. I'm really excited. Anything else we want to throw at Gozer before we hang up on him?
I think that's about all we got for him. I do want to thank him for coming back to Cryptic.
Yeah. Welcome back, Gozer. Anything you want to touch on before we hang up?
No. I'm really happy to be back here. It was, basically, it was an extended family, and I really miss California as well.
Plus, you're a huge Trek fan.
Yeah. I needed a little break. That was all.
It's understandable. Been there. All right, Gozer. Well, thanks so much for coming on this episode of Stoked. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
I feel like I'm just slaughtering you.
Very common.
Goes with it. He suggests at a certain point, and probably not immediately,
Right.
I'm on the ground. They would be up to your ship or 6. Yeah, I think that's important.
All right, it's time for the community feedback, J-Man.
It is time.
Last week we asked folks out there, now everybody out there's heard of the impending improvements to Earth Space Dock and Qo'nos, but we're talking like down the road,
Yeah, there's
months and months off. So we thought this
Probably
might...
at least after season 3 lands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably after the holidays and everything like that, too, because people got to rest after they worked on
That'd be like
season
next
3.
year then.
I know, it's not that far away, though.
Right.
So we thought, because it's in this stage, this might actually be just the right time to throw some suggestions out in the air that Cryptic could pick up when they're kind of planning through the next stage of that
That's right.
area.
If you speak up now, somebody might actually hear you.
Thus, our community question from last week, and we asked you for your ideas to improve Earth Space Dock Qo'nos.
We got quite a few. Some of these were duplicated, but I basically picked the person that sent them in first.
Yeah,
so we're just going to go through bang, 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 say this person said this.
Some of these represent multiple ideas that are sort of consolidated down.
Absolutely. So
All right,
the
what's
first one comes to us from Admiral Drake. We have a lot of admirals that watch this show. Have you noticed? We're really popular with admirals.
Yeah.
Admiral Drake says that he would like to access his ship repairs directly through a dialogue in space rather than having to beam down.
So he essentially enters orbit around Earth Space Dock
Yeah.
or Qo'nos, and then has to...
He can just say, hey, repair my ship.
So you're avoiding a zone.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I kind of like what Graham 6410 has, and I think you could actually maybe, this doesn't avoid the zone, but if you could almost combine these two. A room to watch the ships coming in, and obviously leaving now. I immediately think of that Star Trek 3 scene where the Enterprise comes in all beat up.
Yeah.
And I would, now, let's not get to persistent damage just yet, but I would love to be able to be in that room and see my ship, and then be able to walk up to a console and order repair or something like that. Or, better yet, I would love to get in that room and then talk to my engineer and tell him to repair it.
Yes.
I need to I need to delegate more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a freaking admiral.
All right. Hey, you know what? Speaking of Admiral, we had another Admiral.
Admiral Murphy. He would like a nearby area to both Earth Space Dock and Qo'nos where you can do test drives of new ships that you're going to buy.
Yeah.
Where you can try out the different weapons by fighting weapon platforms or asteroids.
Right now, I use Starbase 24.
Yeah.
Or,
which is cool. I mean, it's nearby for Earth Space Dock.
What
does Qo'nos have? They have to hop into PvP and just take their chances.
Or a deep space encounter, which people hate it when you do that.
Yeah,
because then you level, and people that are native to that area join your deep space encounter, and they get blown away.
Right.
I know that used to happen to me when I was a little punk.
if there was like a testing area, maybe off like the moon, by the moon or something on the other side of it.
Or just put a holodeck on our space dock and just
That's
say you're
somebody
in a
else.
holodeck.
You know what? We'll skip straight to that one because Preston has sent in the suggestion to have a combat holosuite.
Oh yeah,
usable on both of them, as for either ground or space.
Where
you can spawn enemies and try out your new
that'd
abilities.
Be awesome.
Yeah,
I would love that.
I would absolutely love that. Even if it doesn't award a dang thing.
No, it's just to try it out.
Right.
And you could even, make it so you can't try out things that you haven't got access to yet, I guess. But build tests are a pain in the butt in Star Trek Online.
Oh, yes.
So
I think that's why a lot of people watch math, because I do the testing for them.
As the math guy,
Yeah.
In fact, that's takes the most time about
many
math.
respects have died to bring you those math segments.
Many respecs have been new. Now, Ozzy Osbourne wrote in and said he'd like to see a transporter pad or the ability to beam directly into certain areas.
You can't pronounce it's ooey ooey. Ooey ooey.
I liked Ozzy Osbourne, to be honest with
Sure.
you. Plus, I like to think that Ozzy Osbourne watches Stoked. He says
He was actually just asking for a crazy train.
This is for you. This is for you. He says no more wasted time running to the other end of the zone. The J-Man here is a traditional MMO player and always tries to return to the spawn point. He remembers sometimes, but you'll see Jeremy running by and you'll be like,
and then he'll suddenly stop and beam out.
Yeah, because as soon as you see that, it's like, oh yeah, right. I don't have to go to the spawn point. But if there was a transporter pad, you'd totally run to the transporter pad.
Absolutely.
So they should.
The other side of Uiu's suggestion is if they can't put in a transporter pad, if it's too late, they already have it. Instead, allow you the option to beam in wherever you like. If you're going to go to the shipyard, beam into the shipyard. If you're going to go to the bar, beam into the bar.
Like a mini map, the mini map of Earth Space Dock, and you just select the area, and you're setting the transporter coordinates.
Yeah.
Ooh, I digs. All right, what's the Crazy Snowman say?
Crazy Snowman wants in-game access to real-world news, like the Ask Cryptic, anything that shows up on Cryptic, like Star Trek Online news feed.
You don't need that crap.
But think about it. There's a lot of people that don't watch our show, don't watch other podcasts,
They're
don't
bad.
actually pay attention to the forums. You know, that it's just too much information for them. If they had the access in-game to get that same information.
But you know what they'd get? You know what Cryptic would put in there? They'd put in there the Cryptic news roll, which is awesome, but that's just what you get on StarTrekOnline.com, too, or the Patcher.
Sure, but some people just don't want to go to the website. They'd rather just play the game.
I know.
If they had access to something in-game to get that same news.
It would be valuable if it was something more than what's already posted on the Patcher.
I agree. Or even if it was rewritten in like an in-character way or something.
Well,
like
that would be
that
the
would
shit.
Be really cool.
I would be down for that.
Yeah.
Because
even though we read the news, I'd read that too.
yeah, and people want to role play.
Yeah.
They do. And if you could do the announcement of a new ship in game, that would be very good.
You know, speaking of role playing, the next suggestion came from many people, but like I said, Ethan was the first one to send this in. A lot of role players on the Fed side, they don't like Space Dock. They say, scrap it, destroy it. I don't want to see it anymore. Beam me to San Francisco.
Wow.
I want to go to Starfleet Academy.
I think we'll see it one day. I don't think we're going to see it for the Earth Space Dock thing. I guess if you totally scrapped Earth Space Dock completely, I think what we've kind of gleaned is the expectation of Earth Space Dock is what we have now isn't really going to go away. It's just going to be encapsulated inside a new Earth Space Dock.
Right. It's going to be improved, expanded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that to them, because that means there's a lot less they have to go redo. I would love to see San Francisco. I think it's probably like a end of 2011 type thing.
Yeah.
If we see
right
it.
before the end of the world.
Yeah, right. That's a little send-off, right? All right, so...
You know, actually, I want to mention something that I forgot to put in our notes here.
Okay.
Many people asked for basically useless areas. That's what I would call them because I'm tired of seeing content that doesn't have a purpose. But more bars, more lounges, more like game rooms, more hallways, more just places that would exist in Earth Space Dock.
Boy, I struggle to, the reason why I kind of go, is because I'd almost rather have them spend their time on anything else.
Yeah, anything functional. I personally, I totally agree, but there's a lot of people out there that really want Earth Space Dock to be an actual social hub. Maybe even, there was one suggestion, I'm sorry I don't have your name if you're the one that sent this in, but that it was actually asking for captain quarters on Earth Space Dock.
I've thought about that, actually.
Kirk had.
While your ship's parked somewhere, I've thought about that, actually. And
like temporary housing.
Boy, the other thing I was thinking about, when I was thinking about what would Earth Space Dock do in Star Trek, like really, it would be like the central hub where everyone from around the Alpha Quadrant is coming when they're going to Earth.
All the traders, everything.
All the different races. I mean, Earth Space Dock would be like the busiest airport in that entire quadrant, I would think.
Yeah.
So...
Unless there was a separate commercial hub of some sort, and this was the Federation of Planets hub.
Right.
But still...
And there are those other stations, like, out there.
Yeah. But no, I agree. I think that it lacks a certain amount of depth, a certain amount of living life. And I don't know.
We've talked a lot about Earth Space Dock. Should we maybe throw a few of those Qo'nos ideas out?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
This one here I liked a lot. Scary Guy says, barrels of blood wine.
Yeah.
Barrels of blood wine around Qo'nos.
The open top ones, he actually went so far as to say, you need to put them near the Chancellor so that when the new warriors come up and get promoted, everyone standing next to the barrel can dip in their cup and toast to the new warrior.
That'd be a great emote, wouldn't it? Yeah. That would be really cool. All right, I like that one. What about a Targ breeding area? Like
Yeah,
a pen?
Pecoy has asked that if they're going to implement the Targ breeding that was mentioned before, there needs to be an area that's kind of dedicated to it with pens and straw floors and maybe a little battle arena where you can pit your Targs against other Targs.
So cute, little deadly Targs.
Yeah.
Any other Klingon ones come in?
No, that's about it. The Combat Holosuite that I mentioned earlier from Preston, he actually recommended that on the Klingon side there would be no safety features, and you would have to play it at basically a harder difficulty level, so you would incur injuries and things like that.
You know, it'd be awesome. Just saying, I'm just gonna put this out there. A remake of that holodeck program that Worf would always play on the Next Generation.
Oh,
where
yeah.
You had those weird-looking guys.
Yeah, with the big under...
And all the stupid steam and the fallen pillars and stuff. But come on.
And that weird glove thing that he wore.
What the glove thing, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to see that show up in STOked, too, though.
Yeah. And actually, I just remembered another...
I don't know why with my glove.
I don't know why I didn't put so many of these in the show notes, but there was another one that recommended for Earth Space Dock.
Yeah.
Make a holosuite that's dedicated to being a permanent disco, as kind of a homage to the club on Deep Space Nine.
Oh,
with Vic Fontaine.
Oh, I was thinking.
But update it slightly.
You know, it also
because that was like a '50s club, and this would be a '70s disco.
Going back to Star Trek 3, which is where you first see Earth Space Dock in Star Trek, the lounge that McCoy was in was kind of disco-y when he went to go book that trip to the Genesis planet.
Yeah.
And they had those airplanes they were flying, those wire airplanes. And I remember a disco ball being there, but there probably wasn't one.
It was probably just the freaky lighting.
Yeah. But how cool would it be to see that lounge on our space dock? That would be really neat. All right.
So that's about all we got.
Oh, is there on Qo'nos, is there like a punishment? Isn't there like a pain chamber? You know, remember when Worf had to get the pain sticks? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I would like to see that too.
Oh, one other suggestion that actually was tacked on to somebody else here.
A Dixon Hill holodeck mission.
Where was it?
How about a Dixon Hill holodeck mission?
I'd love that. How about just a dance club where you can choose whether it's going to be Dixon Hill or Vic Fontaine or a disco or whatever.
Yeah, I would never pick Vic Fontaine.
No.
I hold. I really just did not enjoy that last part of Deep Space Nine. I just thought it was such a distraction.
We had some other suggestions. I again, not in the show notes.
I know.
I'm terrible at show notes today, but to actually be able to go outside on Qo'nos.
Yes.
Because they felt like the interior was just too confining.
It is, yeah. I agree.
There's that whole outside area on Qo'nos already, and that you don't do hardly anything in. There's like 1 or 2 missions that involve it.
You could put the Targ breeding pin out there, I suppose.
Absolutely. You could put 100 other things. Just put little doors and huts off to the side and have that do something.
EA Graves in the chat room has a suggestion: a holodeck that takes you to Champions Online.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I'm really tempted. I've gotten back into Champions because I know that they're going to be going free to play soon, and I'm really tempted to recreate my Star Trek character in spandex and a cape.
That would be awesome.
Just
Borticus?
Yeah, Borticus.
That would be really cool.
Borticus the Super Gray.
Oh man, if you do that, we got to put it in the show.
Yeah.
The chat room is full of ideas, but I think we'll probably end it there. I think a lot of people have some suggestions. If you've got some we didn't cover, leave it in the comments or over at JupiterColony.com. Anywhere you're watching it, but Jupiter Colony is sort of like the official spot.
Right. We don't have a new community feedback question for you this week. Our brains just aren't working like that. So
we were too distracted by that new episode.
Tune in next week, and we should have a new one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think we'll do that. And then, of course, if you'd like to know when we're live, because we're doing this live, and that's where the chat room comes from when they're interacting with us in real time, you can head over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/live. And we do these at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's when the new STO episode missions come out, so that might help. But you can always go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar, and there's a time zone converter there.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for watching this episode of STOked, and we'll see you right back here next week.
Chris, I don't think that that's how time travel works. I think you're doing it wrong.
Dylan, Murphy and KK in the chat room would like a hat too. Can you ship them one? No, you can keep that one. Do you want to ship them a hat? I know, there's 2 of them and only 1 hat. I understand, buddy. All right, well, that's a new show. There's your episode right there.